Hi everyone, this is Kia tuning in with you guys from Costa Rica. This is probably our fourth week here in Costa Rica. It's been a full year. And so my husband Tommy and I chose to take this time to get grounded and reflect and recharge for the upcoming year. So this webinar that I'll share with you today is really coming out of this place of getting still and recharging and reconnecting to what's really important to me, to us. So just want to see who all is here. We got Elizabeth Kip. Hi, Elizabeth. She was just here with us recently in Costa Rica. Satnam and David. Hi. There's a few others, but the feed's moving a little fast for me to check that. Oh, you got that, good. It's funny, I decided to do this webinar really on the fact of the evolutionary process of life that all of us are in. What things block that evolutionary process, and how we can liberate ourselves when we get stuck, when we get stagnant. And traveling is a big part of that, and I'll share a bunch with you why as we go on. And yeah, I'm inspired because as I decided to do this, I looked on Instagram, and my dear friend Joan Hyman had shared a post, which really is kind of exactly what I wanted to talk with you guys about today. So Joan Hyman is a yoga teacher. We've been teaching at YogaWorks for years and years and years together. I love her dearly, and she has a deep love of travel, as I do. And so she shared that when she took her first trip to India in 2006, she went for 10 weeks to study there. And she said she traveled for a few other weeks after that to far-off places to feed the explorer in her. And she says that she did this on a continual basis because it really started to feed her soul, and it really started to open her up to new experiences and new perceptions on things that she was experiencing in her life. And I find that's one of the most important things, because if we're looking at how to unblock ourselves, how to step into that flow of abundance, we have to be able to look at the things that are preventing that. And so a big part of what I'm going to go through in this webinar is how do we get stuck? How do we get stuck in the cultural expression of who we are? How do we get stuck in the individual expression of who we are? I'm going to jump in. I'm just popping down to see who all else is in here. Oh, Virginie, Jen, Jennifer Sands, Isabel, wonderful. All you great radiant body yogis who have been spending time with me in India, and some of you are here in Costa Rica. So nice that you are able to join live today. So, we're going to look particularly first at what does it mean to be living a life of abundance. So those of you who are on board right here, right now, I want you to share like 3 words that are relevant to you about why, what it means to be living a life of abundance. So pop some things up here, you guys who are watching, and we'll kind of start the webinar from that place. While you guys are figuring that out, or I'm figuring out how to find that on here, I want to share with you the 3 kind of key words for me. And the first one is flow. For me, abundance is blocked the moment I get out of that sense of flow within myself. When I start to doubt what I'm doing, why I'm doing, how I'm doing, or when I get stuck in people-pleasing. Actually been reading a bunch of essays lately from people who've been doing trainings with me and writing on some of their experiences, and it's amazing how many of us share that kind of people-pleasing aspect of ourselves, where we put other people's opinions higher than our own as to what we should do and how we should do it. So we start to look outside of ourselves for those questions. And I'm going to cover a little bit of my key tools for unblocking this abundance later. But just a hint here is we've really got to get into the practice of listening to ourselves and to stop looking outside of ourselves for answers. So those are like two little keys. So flow for me is very important in unlocking the energy of abundance. And the second one is purpose. And it's not that I feel like all of us have a specific purpose here in this life, apart from maybe to evolve and bring joy to others around us, and to become less and less caught in the web of suffering and attachment, and more open in ourselves. But purpose, for me, the moment when my life landed on a path where I was positively engaged with my passion, to me that's purpose, being positively engaged with your passion. And I've had different passions through my life that have served this purpose. I had a career modeling. I was passionate about that at the time, and interestingly, one of the keys that I was passionate about, why I liked that job, if you like, was the travel that I got to do. I really enjoyed traveling to different parts of the world, and just how much that opened up my perception of myself, of other people, and different ways to live and be. Oh, wonderful. Dharma and true self, as Virginie, you're sharing that. I've got peace, serenity, and order. Order, Mary Jo, that's such an interesting one, isn't it? That abundance can flow through order. I'm going to meditate on that. But definitely when there's chaos, when our energy is fragmented and split, like for so many of us living busy and demanding lives, that's what happens, then order is very important, isn't it, to create that sense of flow. So wonderful. And freedom of choice is another one here. It's something that we're so blessed to have, that freedom of choice. And I think for many, if we're working to make money, to make the ends meet, we can start to feel like that freedom of choice is less, because we have so many demands on us. So partly what I'm going to look at the end of this webinar are some key tools that certainly helped me to start to widen that freedom of choice, from kind of living in a place where I was just living paycheck to paycheck, to living in a place where the abundance was flowing on all levels. So wonderful. It's interesting how many of you are saying freedom here. Wow. Gratitude, ease, peace of mind, expansive, joyful, flowing. Oh, I love this. Yeah. So ways to be living a life of abundance. The other one I wanted to mention here, for me at least, is this idea of really engaging in life wholeheartedly, to be embracing each moment in the fullest way imaginable. And the yoga practice has helped me to do this, and in particular my meditation practice. And some of the deepenings that I've had in India have allowed me to recognize that it's so easy for all of us to float along the surface value of life. And it takes a lot of willingness, willfulness, and tenacity to make that claim to go deeper than the surface. And I really state this for so many of us who have this big spiritual vocabulary, who have a lot of these yogic practices, and we may be doing them consistently, but still with a tendency to float on the surface experience. And so we're not allowing ourselves to really dig in to the potential of what is there. And part of the reason I love to go to India is well, first to take people there for the experience, which I can talk more on later because we had lots of questions around that. But but mostly because I get to sit in the presence of masters myself. I get to sit in the energy of people living and gone. that kind of energy, that energetic field in the Himalayas, that aligns me with the understanding of what's possible through these yogic practices, so that I don't just sit and do a practice and float along the surface value of it, but I make that deep commitment to do it to the utmost ability from moment to moment to moment. And to me, that is part of engaging in life wholeheartedly. That's how I do it in my meditation practice. That's how I like to do it in life as a whole. And so giving ourselves opportunities to do that, not holding back, because we, each and every one of us, have that capacity in us to manifest and to live a life far greater than we may have perceived is possible when we're only looking at things from our limitations. So a few things here that I'd love to cover with you guys. So first, my perception on living a life of abundance and why you shouldn't limit yourself. Kind of what I've been going over. I'll just dig a little deeper. And then what gets in the way of the flow of abundance. And what does it mean to live a life as a yogi? That was a question that came, and I really liked that. What does it mean to live a life as a yogi? And feel free to pop your comments on that in the discussion feed here too. And then some of the things I'd like to share about why I feel that travel, and when I say travel, it doesn't have to be exotic travel to India or Costa Rica. It can just be travel somewhere where you shift your daily patterns enough that you give yourself an opportunity to recreate yourself, if you like. So we'll cover that. And and then some key practices that really help to develop this sort of flow state, if you like, this embracing of life in the moment. All right, so I'm going to float back to number one, which is really this perception on living a life of abundance. What I was taught by one of my teachers that resonated so deeply to me was, when you get an idea, when you get a creative idea, when an inspiration comes to you, don't wait to act on it, but do it. Act on it as soon as you can, even if it's a mini step, because the moment that inspiration comes and you act on it, it's like the universal energy and flow is right there with you. And so you get to access and step into that flow. So the thing that prevents that, that's what I want us to look at right now. So if you are in a situation in your life where you're feeling really abundant, start to think of the things that have helped you. But also, just pop down in here, what are the things that have that prevent you from feeling abundant? So I just want to see. So Elizabeth, you say, learning to live a life as a yogi, meeting myself right where I am, accepting what's here, staying open to universal energy. Wow, I love that. I love that. So much wisdom in that, Elizabeth. Yes. So here's a few things while you guys pop down there. Obviously, fear of change. So that's a big one when we're bringing up stepping into a life of abundance. So if we're operating in a certain energetic pattern, if we're operating from certain conditioned beliefs, then we can only go so far. We're kind of living in a degree of limitation. I think I came into this world operating from poverty consciousness, believing that if somebody else had something, it meant that I didn't have that, or that a life of luxury or a life of freedom was something for somebody else, that I could look at from the outside and wish for it, but it wasn't really so attainable. And so for me, this kind of flow of abundance has first been able to look at, well, what was my limiting belief, particularly around money for me, that I could shift and change. And that, interestingly, started to shift and change when I landed on living purposefully, when I landed on living and loving and traveling, if you like, from my passion, which started in my modeling career and then carried on into filmmaking, which was a deep passion of mine, and then came to the point where I absolutely understood that I had to live, breathe, eat, sleep, dream yoga, that there was no doubt in my mind. A moment where I was on a plane and the person in front of me was sharing with her companion that she was on her way to lead a yoga retreat. And I remember feeling such envy that I knew that that's something that I absolutely had to do. And so that propelled me to start to make the changes. Didn't happen overnight. I still had my day job, but slowly, I was able to begin to kind of activate and operate from a deeper state of abundance. And it's just the more I've embraced what I know I need to do, what I know I need to share, the more I've embraced my creativity, the more abundance on all levels has been flowing through my life. So I've been able to rewrite my story around abundance in that way, and to start to see all life as energy. And the moment I got more grounded in my life, more present to myself, more present to others, more present to that kind of deep, quiet voice inside, then the more I was able to manifest the things that are meaningful to me. And when I started my yoga journey, I always knew that what I wanted to do was travel and teach. And so I took all the necessary steps, followed all the guidelines that I was given that would be necessary for that to happen. So that fear of change, looking at what we're attached to that's holding us in a certain mindset. And the other word I put here is coziness. You know, when life can just get so cozy, it's like we've evolved to a certain level and then we hit a plateau and things are just kind of sweet. They're great, you know. Every day is kind of similar, the same. It's okay. It's either okay living or it's nice living or maybe it's great living. But we've plateaued in kind of the evolutionary process. And this kind of bleeds into the next one of what does it mean to live life as a yogi. To me, that is to really live with a commitment to keep evolving, to a commitment to growth, to a commitment to not live from my old subconscious drives, to excel beyond what I thought was possible time and time again. And for example, coming here to Costa Rica, Tommy and I, my husband and I, have been here for a month now, and it was an important moment where we were traveling a lot, teaching a lot, trying to organize our schedules, and having the challenge of that, and then recognizing that we really needed some still time. And we've been coming to Costa Rica for 8 or 9 years now, and every year we come, we say to ourselves, oh, we want to stay longer. We want to stay longer. We want to have a fuller experience. Yes, we love coming here and leading a retreat, but we'd love to actually just live, be here for a while. So us coming this year was just something that I recognized. It's a deep burning desire. It's something that my soul is calling for. So do I want to keep waiting, or do I want to actually manifest this now because it's important? And so it took making some changes. It took redirecting certain areas of our life so that we could be here. And now in being here, things are evolving that I couldn't actually have perceived would have. And I think that's what's interesting when we give ourselves this time at a time. Anyway, I'm going to pop back in. So Jen, you're saying, the day job, the programming from the corporate world definitely creates fear when thinking of leaving it, trying to shift from that certain security to living from our highest good, but not certain income, trusting in the universe. That was a big one. That was certainly a big one for me as well, that trusting in the abundance of the universe. So it's taking a step every day that's bringing you a little bit closer to that goal, and beginning to manifest, keep putting energy into what you're passionate about until the energy of what you're passionate about starts to build to a point where it overtakes the energy of what you're currently doing. That's, you're doing because you feel you need to do it. And so keep building that other energy, that other passion. It took me actually probably at least 7 years in my yoga teaching. 7 years. There was 5 solid years of no travel, just being in the studio, teaching classes, being the one that was always there, to kind of create that stability, to do the thousands of hours of actual practice that could start to make what I was sharing something that was more living through me as opposed to something that I was learned. So I think that when you're looking at following your passions, if you just keep pouring energy into it on a daily basis, then you really create this flow until finally you're pulled into that flow out of where you were. So beautiful, Jen. Thank you for sharing that. And I happen to know you're an absolutely exquisite artist, and that you are putting energy into that. So I really encourage you to keep that going, and you'll see it will start to take life and a form of its own, and you'll be guided. So at this moment, I just wanted us all to remember, or to reflect, or to be present with this concept in the yoga tradition, that this is a benevolent universe, that this creator that is in me, that is in you, that is in all of us, is a living vibration of the divine, of the highest potential. And so we want to remember that really the world is conspiring for us to self-actualize, to self-realize, to be all that we can be. I've been thinking about that since I've been here in Costa Rica. This is an exquisite world that we all live in. When you sit back and you look at creation, and I'm here sitting surrounded by the jungle with the most, like, everything here is larger than life. The spiders are larger than life, the crickets are larger than life, the trees are larger than life, the leaves on the plants are larger than life. It's just this, wow, this expression of creativity, and that creativity is within us. And so if we really want to serve this creative soul within us, we have to break free of the self-imposed limitations, the cultural limitations, the things that we have been led to believe are possible or not possible. Another one of the reasons I go to India all the time is because I see examples of extraordinary people. For example, Swami Chidananda Saraswati Ji, who is the head of the Paramathanikatan, one of the big ashrams in Rishikesh. He's an extraordinary human being. He has done sadhanas that you or I would think is impossible. I mean, take you're 9 years old and you're standing in tree pose for 11 hours a day. Or you're 10 years old or 12 or whatever he was, and you're meditating on one image for 20 hours a day. I mean, think about the strength of of presence that is required to do that. But the extraordinary being that he is evolved through that kind of discipline. And so many of us in today's world, our minds become less, somebody recently used the word feeble. We become feeble-minded. And we want to become strong, stable-minded, because that's what helps us to break free of the limiting beliefs that are around us and within us, and those old patterns. So anyway, I'm going to pop back in and just see what else you guys have been saying. Oh, Allison, I'm so glad that you're on the call here as well. Virginie, you're saying, if I act from a place of truth, then everything is possible. Letting go of distraction and connecting to myself through my practice and meditation helps me. Wonderful. And Florencia, you're saying, living a life as a yogi for me is cultivating self-awareness through the practice of mindfulness and trying to align every choice you make with who you are. That's huge, isn't it? So that begs then the question is, if we have to understand and know who we are. So this kind of leads into what I find is some of the key ways that we can keep stepping into this kind of creative flow. We have to learn to listen. Pandit Rajmani Tiganath from the Himalayan Institute uses a phrase that I come to nowadays over and over again, and he says, follow the voice of your conscience. What is your conscience telling you in any given moment? And when I say conscience, it doesn't have to be this big kind of morality thing. It's much more like, what is that little voice that's telling you what you could be doing in that moment, but you're negating it and saying, oh, no. Or the voice that's telling you, it might be better that you don't do that I don't do this today, but you kind of do it anyway. So the more often we follow that voice inside, then we strengthen our ability to get in the flow, to get in that place where the true source of creativity and abundance lies. And to me, that's the place where my ideas for courses, for classes come from. It's where I start to make the connections between things that I've learned in my study of yoga and things that I've experienced in my practice. And it's where I open up to widen my perception of what is possible. And this, again, I think is one of the reasons why it's good for us to leave our cities and go off and put ourselves somewhere else. I never thought that I would be leading teacher trainings in India, for example, but I went there and I was visiting my dear friend and now very inspired teacher, Anand Mehrotra, and I went to his land, I went to his center, and I knew that I had to do a teacher training there. It was a resounding yes, and I didn't doubt it, and I followed it, and what came as a result of that is I started to see the importance of taking people out of their environment and placing them, and I know so many of you here on this call have been there with me, but that importance of breaking free of our environment, and especially the familial and cultural kind of density of where we live, placing ourselves somewhere else, being immersed in a different culture, and in this case, as yogis, being immersed in a culture that's replete with the practices of yoga, and then going a step further into this land in the Himalayas where the sages have been practicing and meditating for years and years. So you find yourself in this land with this unified consciousness that allows you to drop into a meditative state so very quickly. So I find when I travel there, my inner experiences start to expand and really meet all of the the stuff that I'm studying on, you could say, the mind or the surface level. My experience really rises up to meet that, and the understanding and those major sort of download experiences happen. So anyway, let's see, I'm checking back in with you guys so we can all stay present together. And Lorna, you're saying yes, working on inner strength, beautiful. And you're saying we grow in our flow, Mother Nature, totally. And other cultures, it seems so big. It does seem so big, doesn't it? And here we are right now, just to riff off of that for a moment, in Costa Rica, where the land is just so pranically rich that the jungle has this, and the prana here in the ocean, it just has this way of tapping me straight into a place of extreme reverence for this life, for the bounty of this life. Just sitting, not needing anything, but just being in that place of, oh, wow, this life, this preciousness, this reverberation, this intelligence within that's guiding, that's present no matter where I am on the surface craziness of life, just feeling that expansive place. I feel that in this jungle, in this place. And culturally, the people in Costa Rica are just so loving and open and kind. And it's really nice to be in a place where there's that vibe. It's pura vida. It's a good life. So, yay. Checking back in with you guys again. And Christy, you're saying you've never been able to meditate the way we did in India. Isn't that funny? Yes. But the fun thing is, and I was just having a conversation with Rod Stryker, with Yoga Rupa, about this. You know, when you meditate and you reach that state of expansion, the key is you want to remember that state. So when you sit down to meditate the next day, you can remember it, you can sense it in your energetic field, you can sense it in your being, and then you can land in that similar feeling and then expand upon it. Come back the next day. Remember, oh yeah, there was such sweetness. You start to feel and find that sweetness again. You expand it. And so this is the way we keep opening on that. But for me at least, it took going to India and having that full drop-in experience to even understand what it meant to meet and to reach a meditative space. So, yay. So, Christy, you're saying remembering is key, and I know it's possible to have that again. Thank you. And Sarah May, you're saying, I now live in the countryside in France, whereas while I was living in Paris and big city in Asia for my whole life before, and I do feel the importance of being surrounded by nature. Yeah, it's so interesting. Recently when we were in India, just really a month ago, Anand mentioned that. He's like, we talk about nature as though we're not a part of it, but we are part of nature. And this nature within us, as soon as we are relating to nature outside of us, we start to create this beautiful coherence and balancing. Whereas when we're living in the city and we're on our devices that are allowing this to happen right now, and we're busy, we're not able to access the intelligence that's right there in nature as the divine creative force has created it. And so, what I'm experiencing coming here in Costa Rica was that the first few days, just pure joy, relaxation. And then I hit this point, which was really interesting and unexpected, where I felt bored. I was like, wow, this is interesting. I'm bored. And I dug into that a little bit, and I realized that the boredom was a stage of going into a deeper, more relaxed, receptive place. but the boredom was just below the distraction. And then through the boredom, underneath was this really deep space of just receptivity and willingness to just be and to see what wanted to come through. Yeah. So I'm going to just see what other questions we have here. Lorna, you're like, I'll die if not for nature. I get it. I so get it. All right, let's see. So I don't completely lose my track. Okay, so that's kind of been covering a lot about the importance of travel. Right away, from the very beginning, when I started travel, when I was modeling, before I was even like teaching yoga, although I was practicing then, it was every time I would travel and leave my environment, it felt like an opportunity to keep recreating myself, being in environments that I wasn't used to, being around people that I wasn't used to, new cultures. It really allowed an awareness of self and a capacity to start to just do all those micro little changes and evolutions that didn't seem possible when you're around people that are holding you in a certain perception, because you feel like you're always meeting them in that same perception. When you leave, things change. It's pretty exciting. Of course, then the trick is to return, so to speak, to where you're from, and to land and bring that wholeness of self, that evolutionary self, back there, and not to slip back into the old patterns. Oh, Alan is here. Hi, Kier. I totally agree with you about India. I came back, and this is my first time, and just don't want to leave. It was a life-changing experience being in a different culture and place. I was able to teach kids yoga. It was an amazing journey. A family of 10 living in a small square room, all smiling and loving life. Exactly. We live in such a privileged place for most of us living in the Western world and in the U.S., perhaps particularly. So it's just so humbling when we get to see how different people live and how happy they are. And so that's a question that somebody asked me on the Facebook feed that asked me to answer was, do Tommy and I, do we still live in LA? Did we let go of our home? And yes, we did let go of our home. And in letting go of our home, it was such an interesting process to me to see how attached I was to home and to so many things that were related to that home. And I happened to watch the documentary Minimalist, or Minimalism, one of the, and it really awakened in me this desire for a simpler life. And I recognized that I was attached to so much, and I wanted to become less attached. So we went through a process. Yes, we sold the house, which was being sold anyway, and then we sold or gave away almost all of our furniture. Gave away mostly a lot of clothes. And so now we're in this interesting place where at first we weren't sure how long we would be in this place of this somewhat nomadic life. But I think both of us are recognizing in this moment in time, at least, that it's allowing us a different level of freedom and presence in the moment, because you are where you are and you have what you have with you, and it's not a lot. When I first went to India, my very first trip, I took a massive backpack and then a little tiny backpack. And before long, I left my big backpack in a closet in a hotel in New Delhi, and I traveled all over for months with a little tiny day pack with a couple of changes of clothes and my toiletry bag and my camera, which was really important to me at that time. And I traveled with yogis, I walked in the mountains, I slept outdoors. It was a most magnificent, liberating experience. So in a way, this is kind of where we're back to right now. So checking back in with you guys. Minimalism is a great and provocative film from Elizabeth Kipp. My husband Thank you. He's text bombing my webinar telling me he loves me. Thank you, Tommy. He was looking at me over there. I was like, oh, am I talking too long? But no. So then, wow. So I've been, want to just answer some of these questions. So one question that quick came through was, how has my practice improved by particularly traveling to India? So I mentioned a couple of ways, just being in that unified field, being around some of the yogic masters there. And I think such an important point for all of us in the West. That pilgrimage to the birthplace of yoga, it doesn't matter. You don't have to do it if it doesn't call to you, for sure. But what I do implore everyone to do is to really start looking into the bigger picture of yoga, the holistic practice of yoga. In the West, we've started to isolate and separate. It's either this yoga or it's that yoga, or I do this, or oh, you do that yoga, well I do, and it's we're losing the essence of what it means to be a yogi. The essence of what yoga is this is a pathway to a more evolved self, to perhaps you could say a more enlightened way of living. And I don't want to put myself above anyone else here, but just for me, a more enlightened way of living, a more evolved way of being is to be free of my attachments as much as I can, to reduce suffering, to reduce the ways that I'm caught up, and increase the ways that that I can be in the full presence and recognition of the beauty and bliss and potentiality of this life. When I go to India, I'm reminded that all of the yogic cities that are mentioned in the 3rd chapter of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, they're all possible. And it's not that I want all these superpowers for any necessary reason. I don't. I just like to remember that what we perceive as reality is just a fraction. So let's remember the potentiality that we all have here to break free of the current insanity that's reflected in our world, and to start to create something that's just deeper, more joyful, more peaceful, more inclusive, where we're constantly looking for ways to unite with other people, to unite with our environment, to unite within ourselves, that we are starting to fulfill this promise that's inherent in every one of us human beings to live joyously, purposefully, to access our full potential. And of course the yogic practices that help us to do that, to be practicing those on a daily basis, to be taking time every single day to remember that we are not what we do, that we are this great living intelligence. And if we just get quiet, that intelligence starts to speak to us. Within 30 seconds of getting quiet, you already start to tap into this deeper space within you, this deeper force of knowing, and just how important that is. So let's see if you guys have... Amen. Yes. John Comerford, just a big hello. I'm going to say this from Tommy as well, who's lying on the daybed over there. A big hello from us. So glad that you're here. Yay. Lorna, you're saying I always wanted to visit India since reading Goldie Hawn's book. I love it. Goldie Hawn's book. Yay. That reminds me that I came into yoga through Raquel Welch's book. Wow. It's great. A Lotus Grows in the Mud. That's the book. My husband wants to take me to Costa Rica. Yay! Well, all these places right there just allow us to connect in different ways. So let's just see, just the last couple here. Any questions you guys have, pop them in there. Why sacred places are important. So that was something that somebody said. Well, interestingly, I feel like this, where we are in Costa Rica right now, this land that we're on in this moment in time was used for ceremony. And so there's a sacredness to this land, and you can absolutely feel it. And the same thing, as I mentioned before, going to India, just that generally in the Himalayas, this unified field, this consciousness that's being held by deep seekers. And then the temples, when we go to India, we visit very specific temples because there's such an energy, a Shakti, if you like, that you can connect to there, that revives us, that reminds us, that infuses us with more possibility, more potential. So sacred places to me, a very important part of this journey. And making pilgrimages, making a pilgrimage to somewhere that's meaningful to you. Just that act of setting out on a journey. As we all know, it's the journey, not the destination. And everything we learn when we set aside that time for ourselves. So great, just want to pop in here. Oh, good. And Virginie is saying, how do you keep your practice and motivation going daily? It's such a good question. There's so many ways to answer that, but how do I keep my practice and motivation going daily? Well, for number one, it's something that I love to do. And I think with all of us, when we love to do something, we're much more willing to show up. Number two is, I allow myself some flexibility so it's not rigid. I love to practice first thing in the morning, but since I've been here in Costa Rica, and it's been very windy for a few days, so I was enjoying actually staying in bed a little bit longer and letting the wind die down so I didn't get too vata deranged, practicing later. So those are some of the things, being a little bit flexible in my approach to my practice, so there's no rigidity there, but honoring that understanding that it's so easy to get caught in the surface value of life. It's so easy to get caught up in the chasing after things, in the comparison game of what everybody else is doing that you want to do but you don't feel you're there yet, or caught up in other people's business, or unhelpful activities, whatever that may be, but getting into that surface value where we forget that there's this living intelligence, there's this divinity within us that wants to speak uniquely through us. That's what keeps my practice going, because if I get caught in the surface value of life, and just like anyone else, it happens to me, I just get involved in the energy of chasing. I get depleted pretty quickly. I start to react as opposed to respond to life. And I lose the magic. I forget why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if any of those things happen, I know that I got to dig deeper in my practice. And often when that is happening in the surface value, then I'm usually in the surface on my practice. It's so easy just to show up on the mat and say, well, I'm going to do it today because I'm committed to doing it today. But there you are. I make this joke in teacher training sometimes. Say you're doing the prosperity meditation. Had. I'm going to do this later, and then there's my shopping list, and I better not forget the whatever, and there you go. You spend 11 minutes, and I've been doing the hard, but I'm just chatting away in my mind all day. and so the value of that practice is diminished so much. And it's not to say that we're going to keep 100% concentration all the time, but wow, when you do hold that concentration and you let go of the feeble-mindedness and you really penetrate beneath the level, then you start to feel that flourishing energy start to build within you. So for me, lately especially, I've been really getting so much joy of sitting in my practice and just asking myself the question, who is experiencing this practice? Where is that person living, or that energy? Where does it live inside of me? And attuning in the most exquisite way I can to that energy of intelligence inside of me, and committing to just stay with that, and then recognizing, oh, there I was just on the surface again. Okay, here wow. So anyway, little little hints from my internal mind space deep here in the jungle. I'm curious to see what you guys do. So, when you're wanting to keep yourself refreshed and restored in your practice. I had this, okay, I'll close with this, and then I'll just answer any other questions you may have. But I had such a distinct image when we were doing our retreat here a few weeks ago, of how this creative force is it's that same creative force that's in each and every one of us, and just looking at other human beings from that place of, wow, as Yogi Bhajan said, recognize the other person as you. There's this being. We're all parts of the same rich, incredible creative force, and we're all reflecting different aspects of being to each other. We've all developed different personality codings to this expression of divinity. And what we're working to do is slowly unveil all those little personality limiting perceptions from ourselves, and to mirror it to each other, until we can really land in that place where there's that true recognition and the fruitfulness and potentiality that arises from that. So anyway, that's been some of my crazy musing here in Costa Rica. Thank you guys thank you so much anyway for sharing and being a part of this beautiful journey of life, and this journey of yoga, and this shared commitment that we all have to be the very best version that we can be, and to hold that space for one another. And John Comerford, you're saying, was there a precise moment when you knew your destiny was a healer? What did you see, hear, think, and feel? There's no absolute precise moment. But I was with a teacher, beautiful teacher, John Valinsky, in San Francisco when I lived there for a hot second. And he said to me, when life got in the way of yoga, I made yoga my life. So that happened. And then I guess the definitive moment was when I actually was in a Kundalini yoga class. I did a strong navel kriya. After doing a very powerful exercise, I was lying on the ground, and a deep peace and calm spread all over me, and I had that first full glimpse as a mature adult, first full glimpse of that greater self. And once I recognized that place, I knew that I could help people to go there, and that's really what has been a big joy for me. And John Comerford here is Tommy Rosen, because he had to come and say hello.
Gumby. Love you guys. Love all of you.
Yay. Thank you so much for joining today. It's so great to be in community with each and every one of you. May we keep delving into the deep mystery of life, and not settle for anything that belongs to the surface, not settle for anything that keeps us viewing ourselves as separate or other beings as separate, that allows us to step into that richness of our heart, of loving one another wholeheartedly, of living from that place of passion and potential, and breaking free of all the limitations so that we can be this whole tribe of beings who are an example in this time, in this current environment, global environment. Let us be the living representations of that change and hold ourselves in that light so we can, as Yogi Bhajan said, be a lighthouse to all those around us and share these beautiful teachings of yoga that have nothing to do with religion and everything to do with the spiritual being having a human experience and accessing that potential. So my love to all of you. Thank you for being so connecting with me through here and sharing all of your beauty. All right. Sat Nam.